Well, Joe here. I hope this microphone's so good that it can pick up Pug snoring in the other room. Anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about what I do for training for long cycle, and I put a long, full training session. Obviously, bathroom breaks are omitted. But anyway, this is what I like to train my long cycle training with, is intervals of heavy weights and slightly lighter than what I'm going to compete with for endurance. So basically there's a 20 kilogram bell, and I'm doing a warm-up set just to get a feel. I've done some mobility stuff beforehand, maybe hopped on the rower for a couple minutes. Definitely made sure that my muscles are warm. Sometimes I go into training with a little quicker than most people, but you gotta think I've been at the gym all day. Yeah, I know that's pink, but so the kettlebell. So anyway, pink, purple, whatever, it doesn't matter. But so I've been there all day, and chances are me showing a couple things and lubricating my joints, and that should be pretty good. So when I might jump into a session, know that you probably shouldn't do this same. But anyway, like I said, start off with a couple light sets. 2 20 kilogram bells for me doing long cycle isn't really that heavy, especially if I'm doing minutes. But anyway, this is I like to do 90 seconds. So I feel like you can hit a couple different energy systems there, especially with the heavier weight in front. So using up, phosphate and creatine. I like using creatine during my workouts. I take about 5 grams. I don't feel the need to overdo that stuff. But anyway, it's coming up. We're gonna have some slow motion on this video, but this is one of the stretches I like. I call it a wind up because, as you can tell, like going around, it's a transverse plane. I feel it really hits a lot of stuff. A lot of people do the teacup exercise. Steve Cotter likes to do that, and I do as well. But this guy right here, I feel like it gets my lats, and it does a lot. But anyway, we're coming up on these slow motion stuff, and you'll be able to see the technique, and I'm gonna really pick apart what I do. So basically, here's that 32 kilogram long cycle in slow-mo. So I have a nice stable base, I hike them back, and I'm using leverage to bring them back up from my hips. Notice how I'm keeping my elbows as tight to my body as I can. The triceps are tight to my body. I don't have the best rack position because I've spent so many years doing heavy weight training, and I have my midsection's round as a telephone pole, so it's not really conducive to doing awesome rack position, but I do what I can, and that's all that matters. So when I train, I'm going to focus on doing the absolute best rep after rep. I do not care how many I'm getting in my training. I'm working on time. Now, as you notice here, I'm dropping down. So I do about 30 seconds on, then I took 30 seconds off. And here's that slow motion of the 20. As you can tell, they should look near identical to the heavier weights. And that's why I find it important is for injury prevention is so many people they can lift really, really heavy weights, but they end up getting hurt when they're picking up a pencil off the ground or something, that they don't pay attention that they still need to be tense in certain areas. So anyway, I like to go back and forth and have my average weight as what I'm trying to compete with. Might be a long video. I'll try to not to bore you to death with my conversation. But anyway, so as you can tell, still keeping that nice stable base. I'm on my cleans. I'm trying to keep my whole foot on the ground. As I drive up, I am focusing on extending through the quads, a dip, drop under it. And I use my calves a lot because my calves are pretty strong, and they're an accessory that a lot of people don't use. I even use them on the drop just because there is more. Here comes the rain dance, the wind-up stretch, you know. You got to make your training fun, so definitely tell people when you're going to be doing weird movements so they can look at you. So anyway, I just try to train as intensely as I can, but at the same time I'm trying to feel everything, feel every single rep, and just try to make them awesome. Here comes slow motion again with those 32s. Notice the nice hike back. Notice how the bells don't flip flop, they don't bobble underneath me. I feel if you start the rep with that bobble underneath you, it's going to be bad up top. If it's bad at the bottom, it's going to be bad at the top. So take your time. Make sure that from your shoulder, through your elbow, through your wrist, to the very end of the kettlebell stays in a straight line. There's no point. You have to wait for that weight to slow down right there, and then we come back up. So you're using the momentum. That's why I think a lot of people think that this is easy. They think that, oh, you're just swinging something. Obviously, they've never done this. I mean, that's 140 pounds that I'm decelerating, transitioning, and then bringing back up into this spot that I want it to be. It's not as easy as a lot of people tend to think. Anyway, I'm wearing a knee sleeve in my right knee. I got meniscus surgery a couple months ago before this, so I'm trying to warm my way back into this. Here's that slow motion again with the, as you can tell, it's slightly different. I don't have to use as much calves there, but like I said, I'm using muscle as accelerant and deceleration tactics. So basically what you're doing is you're sensing that weight. If you get used to using the same weight all the time, you run the risk of, I think, in my opinion, you run the risk of just getting so used to it, and then you can't do everything else good. I mean, well, or whatever. So I like to have that feel for all different types of weights in my training. Let's see. There we go. So how I like to do this is, it just depends on how heavy I'm going, but this whole session was probably 8 rounds of the 32s and then the 20s. Obviously, if I'm trying to increase it, make it progressive, I'm going to keep track of that. But I mean, you gotta think, a kettlebell sport set's 10 minutes. So I think if I'm training a lot longer or a lot less, it's not gonna be on point. So once again, I was feeling a little bit tight, so drop down, do some thoracic work. I think the thoracic is really important. I'm talking on this video after I just did the IKFF Worlds, and of all the stuff that I did, long cycle and snatch and a jerk relay, my thoracic spine and spinal erectors are the most sore. So I feel that it's easy for us as kettlebell athletes to get really, really tight in that area, especially with that forward rounding of the thoracic spine. I always make sure that my glutes are engaged just enough. But kettlebell sport, I mean, it's the biggest thing. It's based on, like I call it transitional tension. So there's tension at certain points, and you have to, it's not just 100%, it's a transitional point. So you have to focus on how you handle that weight. So right here, I'm transitioning my motor patterns from doing 32 kilogram kettlebell in each hand to doing 20 kilogram in each hand, and that's a transition. If it happens really quick, you don't want to throw 32 kilograms of, in each arm of force into those 22 kilogram bells. So that's a major point. Also, what I did here, I was sticking to around an 8 rep per minute pace. Maybe increase it up to 10 with these 20s. But as you can tell, I did 30 seconds with the reds, and that was about 4 reps. So that would have been an 8 rep per minute pace. Here comes some other stuff, and we're going to do some other angles for you coming up. Here's a ugly mug coming to check and see. But anyway, here is from the side. And getting a little tired. Like I said, shooting for anywhere 8 rounds of that stuff. I mean, that's a good amount of work. Like I said, you're shooting for a 10-minute set. Unless you're going for longer or something like that, I don't think there's any point in training a lot more than that, unless you're doing much lighter weight and working on your conditioning. But from the side, as you can tell, I try to keep my heels down as long as I can, drive off, initiate it from the quads in the first dip, get a little help from the calves, drop under it, get those heels to hit at the same time the elbows extend to the side of my ears. And notice how the kettlebells didn't bobble there. Now what I like to do is, that's still 140 pounds. I don't care about, I don't want to hurt myself. So I try to catch those weights as soft as I can. To me, the game's about deceleration. You're decelerating that here, here, and when you come back up. So we're going to actually work on the back view as well. You notice where those kettlebells will look like they touch together like magnets. They do not bounce at all. I do not want them to bounce between my legs. You can see fully extended elbows. It might look a little different. My biceps may be a little bit larger than some that compete in kettlebell sport, but notice I have relaxed shoulders in the rack position. I've actually activated my lats to keep the kettlebells towards my body and keep my shoulders safe. So coming up, a few more minutes, and I like to show it from all different angles so you can see a little bit more how it feels if you're not there in person. Now here's a slow motion from the side. With the 20s, notice that they're still not bobbling. So if now that's slightly different there. I could use a little bit more control to move around on my torso. I launched that from my legs. And a lot of people think it's different than doing Olympic lifting. You're not flexing at your hip when you're dropping that weight down, because the weight is in a different spot. You're actually leaning. Once you catch it in the rack and you adjust and connect to your body, you lean slightly back. Now notice I didn't let the elbows pop off my body. A lot of people do that on the first dip. I didn't drop off. You want to keep a connection as long as you can. The farther the weights are from you, same as in Olympic lifting or powerlifting, the farther away they are from you, the heavier and harder they are going to be as far as leverage. Let's move. Coming back to the back soon, but there's just a lot to be had, a lot to be gained when you're using multiple different weights. And sprint sets versus just standing in the rack, I mean, you definitely want to work on your rack position, but if I can work on training energy systems differently instead of just standing there or endurance, or I need sprint too, so I need to be able to tap into that to allow me to get a good 30 seconds of sprinting. You know, I want to catch up to people at the end, or just really get ahead and get some more reps. And you don't want to do that at the beginning. That's just like sprinting the first mile of marathon. So anyway, notice how I'm catching those kettlebells. They roll to a stop. They're not slamming into my shoulder. Rolling to a stop. And we're in our final 30 seconds or so of this video. But notice the knee alignment. Notice the alignment of the body. You can tell I try to picture a skeleton. I try to make sure that everything's nice and stable. nice and supported. Belt's not too tight. I'm not headbanging. Well, I could be. Like I said, Bleeding Through's playing background here. You can't hear it, but it is. Anyway, if you guys are looking to get into more kettlebell sport, let me know. Shoot me an email, danielsfitnesstraining@gmail.com, and start at the base. Start at the fundamentals with teachmekettlebell.com. And we will see you guys later. Thanks for watching my long cycle training.